So, Wiz of the Coast is back at being Wizards of the Coast. Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com with another rant video. This never stops. Just the ludicrous, just the absolute insanity of Wizards of the Coast wanting to bury its head in the sand over data. I did a whole video back in the day, still one of my most viewed videos of all time, of when Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast, asked MTG Goldfish to stop, and I like to put asked in quotations, more like threatened MTG Goldfish from publishing information on their website about 5-0 finishes. How it has worked in the past is Wizards only publishes a percentage of the decks that actually go 5-0, so it's a crapshoot. Like, I've gone multiple 5-0s throughout the history of my MTGO experience, and it's funny because I think only one or two of them have ever showed up on the on the 5-0 deck list, which kind of sucks because again, you always want to see one of your lists, one of your brews make it. But so it's been over a year since they told MTG Goldfish. What MTG Goldfish was doing is they were basically, I think they were hiring someone that still has the data. Yeah, whoever it is that still has the capabilities of finding all of the 5-0 finishes and recording that, come in contact with me. We need to find a solution to this. We need to fight back against Wizards and their just ridiculous stance they have on data. But anyway, what was happening was this person was creating bots to physically view all of the matches. And then compile a bunch of data so you could see a win-loss record between decks. And you could get the sheer numbers of, like, is Zombies actually a bad matchup versus Mardu Vehicles? Or is it actually not that bad? Because you have a lot of hearsay. You have a lot of people with their justifications. But it isn't until you have the sheer numbers when you can actually for certain say, yes, at least as far as it's been winning or losing 60% of the time, for example. So they had all of the metagame breakdowns. It was awesome. It was something that was a very, very amazing feature on MTG Goldfish, and then Wizards lost it and told them to stop publishing that information. And meanwhile, they only show 10 decks and went 5-0 on that day. So now you can just read over this article and you can see just how out of touch Wizards of the Coast is with just reality, life, just the way things are. I can't even think of any of their competitors doing so. I've talked about this in my other video. You can go look at all of the breakdowns per character on Dota 2. I always reference Dota 2 because it's the other game that I play. So I'm familiar. I don't like to reference things that I'm not familiar with. So Dota 2, I can go to like Dota 2 stats, and you can literally see all of the breakdowns of character versus character, lineup versus lineup, win-loss ratios. And it doesn't lead to a solved meta, which they're so worried about. So let's just read this stupid article. It's not very long, and let's just go through it, and I can just rip it apart here. It says, over the history of Magic Online, we have published a steady stream of deck lists for players to explore and learn from. But the way we do that has changed over time. Our current method of presenting deck lists for Magic Online leagues is to randomly select 10 of the top performing deck lists per format per day. Starting today, July 10th, we will be reducing the number of top deck lists from 10 to 5, and each of these decks will be randomly selected with the caveat that each list will have at least 10 different cards from every other list. Why? There are plenty of reasons we think posting deck lists is an excellent idea, and it is something we intend to continue doing. Deck lists give players a general sense of what the environment looks like, and everyone loves seeing a sweet new brew or an interesting adaptation to an established deck. Players want to know what they should be gearing up to beat so they can build or select their decks. Okay, first paragraph, exactly. Data is good. It makes you make an informed decision. It helps people like myself who isn't a fan of net decking. That's why I call myself the Rogue Deck Builder. It gives me the tools to combat it. This is a good thing for everyone. People that like to net deck, it lets them to have an informed decision on what they should be playing. What the hell is wrong with that, Wizards? What is wrong with it? With all that said, the way we've been presenting deck lists for Magic Online is particularly prone to pushing metagames toward become homogenous or solved extremely quickly. Bullshit. Bullshit, Wizards. I will say that one more time. Bullshit. The thing that is causing your metagames to become homogenous or solved has been cards like Reflector Mage, like Aetherworks Marvel, like Saheeli, or Philidar Guardian, where there is no reason to be playing anything else because it is that freaking busted. Your game should have balanced cards and balanced strategies if you want it to become a very diverse metagame. During Return to Ravnica and Innistrad, tons of deck lists were produced. There wasn't a solved meta. Even at the very end, there still wasn't a solved meta. It's because all of the cards were balanced a lot better in that day and age than there was then. Also, now with the core sets being out of the equation, there have been less answers. So many of the pros, so many of the brewers, so many members of the community have laid this out in better terms than I have, with actually data to back it up, that this is the reason why you're getting solved metagames, is you're pushing stupid mechanics. Kaladesh was one of the worst sets ever. Let me repeat that. Kaladesh was such a pushed set that you could only go particular strategies and particular cards because they're just the clear winners. Nothing came close to Toolcraft Exemplar. They wanted to make sure that artifacts were worthwhile to play. So they had combinations like the Toolcraft Exemplar, Heart of Quran. Why would you play another 1/2 drop when that exists for that particular type of strategy? You have pushed strategies that lead to pushed decks, that lead to solved metagames. Wizards, you're stupid. We're all sick and tired of the leadership at Wizards just being out of touch, which is basic facts of life, just basic anything. Okay, let's calm down here, Kevin. Let's get back on track here. Where'd I go? So, since we have been presenting a random selection of top-performing decks, even if a deck doesn't have a particular high win rate, it can appear to be extremely dominant if it is widely played. With only this information, it's not possible to disentangle win percentage and metagame percentage. Okay, how about like not bullying sites like MTG Goldfish from actually releasing the sheer data? How about that, Wizards? This can lead and at times has led to feedback cycles where a deck appears more dominant than it would otherwise, which leads to an even greater percentage of play. I've been speaking about this forever. Like I say, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when everyone comes to a certain tournament with a particular deck. And of course, you see the top 8 be dominated by that. But you haven't seen your Pro Tours be dominated by that. You've seen the last Pro Tours, even though they tend to be quite new, they've all usually had a new archetype that hasn't been, there's things that just come out of the left field, or because you're right, it doesn't hold up to actual scrutiny there. So really, Wizards, what you're even admitting to is that there needs to be more data out there, not less, because less data leads to worse problems. Oh my God, this is just, they're fighting themselves in this entire paragraph. They're arguing their own argument against themselves. Alright, so we acknowledge that many players would like in-depth statistics on the metagame. Providing that level of detail can quickly lead to the perception of a stale or solved metagame. Again, they're blaming us. They're blaming us for the problem. Rather than looking at an internal look of why their standard format or their whatever the format is at the time is terrible, it's just us. And it's us netdeckers. This is the problem. I mean, they're starting to sound like a particular YouTuber here about about net decking. Oh, wow. Calm down, Kevin. All right, so regardless of whether there's ample room for the format to evolve, these deck lists aren't intended to be a substitute for a level of detail. Rather, they're to give players an idea of what they might face and a place to look for new ideas, whether that's a deck to try out cards to tinker with. Under this system, new and unique decks are far more likely to appear. Bullshit, Wizards. Bull. Is this just an educated guess? Because you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong that this is going to lead to a healthier meta. Man, is this the exact same thing I've heard of local game stores banning or not rewarding? Like, you can actually play in their FNM with a net deck, but you have less prize eligibility? I've heard of that idea before. This is just absolutely ludicrous. Whether that deck's to try cards. Okay, under the system, new and unique decks are far more likely to appear, and it's our goal to foster that creativity and innovation rather than stifle it. Okay, you are stifling it, you tards. You are 100% stifling it by not allowing data to flow as it should. I'm just speechless. Over the past 6 months, we've had extensive conversations about what we can do to improve the experience of playing Magic, examining whether from our process design to our design philosophies to the way we communicate and remain engaged with our players. There's no answer to making Magic the most fun it can be, but this is one of many steps we're taking under the belief that it makes for a more fun game overall. I want to highlight this paragraph here. Under the belief. Can you challenge your own beliefs, please? Can you look internally once rather than externally and say, you know, it's NetDecker's problems. It's places like MTG Goldfish releasing all the data that's a problem. It's creating solved metagames. Man, even games that are completely solved, like chess, it's been around for thousands of years, find innovation every now and again. You have people coming up with new strategies and new ways to play the game with a very finite set of games. And metagames a lot of times just adjust just based on the fact that there is more people playing a certain thing. Like in a good metagame where it's what I call self-regulating. So all of a sudden Zombies decks becomes the #1 deck. Then people start playing Chandra Flamecaller and the Sweltering Suns and Fumigates. And then all of a sudden those get weeded out, and then people start playing like hard counters, like creature tempo-based decks and countering the sweepers. And then, or playing value-based decks like Teamer Energy that you can sweep the board, it doesn't matter, they'll just recover. And then those become the #1 deck because they're beating up on the Fumigate decks. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I have a Go Bigger deck that just gets bigger threats than the Teamer Energy, and that just starts beating out the Teamer Energy. And now the Teamer Energy can't compete. So then we have the decks that play spot counter spells and spot removal that beat out the Go Bigger strategies. And then we have those decks all of a sudden get beat out by Zombies because spot removal and spot counter spells are bad against a Go Wide strategy. And it becomes a nice little self-regulating format, a good meta game. That's the definition of meta game, trying to figure out what deck is going to be doing against what. These solved metagames have nothing to do with anything other than pushed strategies and broken cards, or just cards that are clearly better than other cards. It's why your Legacy and your Modern are doing a lot better than Standard at the moment, is because there is a fair amount of answers and a fair amount of threats. There's many different ways, and there's nothing that just really stands out as the clear winners. Death Shadow's sort of starting to get that way, but we're starting to see a lot of decks specifically combat Death Shadow, and the metagame is adjusting once again. I'm just at a loss of words here. Just at a huge loss of words at how stupid Wizards of the Coast is as far as their R&D is. I cannot think of their competitors. Can someone give me any sort of other online game or game in general that takes the same stance? Even in sports, you can find a lot of just sheer data on the way the game is played, and then other sports teams react to that and innovate in that realm right there. This is just a stupid topic. I can't believe we have to keep going down this road, and it just baffles me. Just baffles me. You know, I'm sure I'll never get a sponsorship from Magic because of how critical I am of them, but I think that people need to call them out when they need to be called out. There needs to be new blood. There needs to be people that understand gaming in general, or just understand game theory in general. Otherwise, I can't see how they could come to this conclusion. Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.